For 3 decades, the world has treated 419 fraud as a Nigerian problem. But what if that story is incomplete? What if the reason 419 became a global industry has less to do with Lagos and more to do with London, New York, and the international financial system? Because scams don't become billion-dollar enterprises simply because criminals exist. They become billion-dollar enterprises because money can move. And for that money to move, someone has to open the accounts, process the wires, create the shell companies, purchase the properties, and look the other way. This is not just the story of the people who sent the emails. It is the story of the institutions that made the profit possible. Meet Ray Hushpuppi. He had 2.8 million followers on Instagram. They watched him live like a billionaire in Dubai. Private jets, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. Photos with celebrities, footballers, even Nigerian politicians. His name was Ramon Olorunwa Abbas. The world knew him as Ray Hushpuppi. He called himself a real estate mogul. In reality, he was one of the world's most prolific money launderers. Behind the luxury was a criminal empire, built on a business email scams, bank fraud, and cyber heist. One scheme defrauded a US law firm out of $40 million. Another illegally moved $14.7 million from a foreign bank. He even targeted an English Premier League club. The attempted theft was $124 million. By his own admission, in just 18 months, he conspired to launder over $300 million. He didn't stop at corporations. He scammed a Qatari businessman out of $1.1 million meant to build a school. In June 2020, Dubai police came knocking. He was arrested and extradited to the United States. Then came the twist no one saw coming. He named a top Nigerian police official as his accomplice, Deputy Commissioner Abba Kyari. A US warrant for his arrest followed almost overnight. In April 2021, Hushpuppi pleaded guilty. One count, conspiracy to commit money laundering. The sentence, 135 months in federal prison, over $1.7 million ordered in restitution to his victims. His partner in crime, Galib Alumari, wasn't spared either. 140 months and $30 million in restitution. The lesson behind the luxury? Crime doesn't stay hidden. To know the extent of Section 419 and the relationship with Hushpuppi, we need to rewind back to 1995. In 1995, a retired school teacher in Houston, Texas, wired $27,000 to a bank account in Nigeria. He had never met the man on the other hand of the transaction. He had never visited Nigeria. He had received weeks earlier a letter which was typed, formal, promising him 30% of $15 million, frozen government funds if he would simply help facilitate the transfer. He wired the money. He never heard from anyone again. He never reported it to the police. That last part, the silence, is where this story actually begins. Everyone knows the Nigerian prince email. It has become a cultural joke, a meme, the punchline of 1,000 tech comedy sketches. What almost no one knows is the actual scale of what it actually represents, or more importantly, who it actually targets and why those targets stay quiet. The scheme takes its name from Section 419 of the Nigerian Criminal Code, the provision criminalizing advance fee fraud. The mechanisms are simple. A victim is approached by letter, then email, then text, now social media with a proposition. There is money, large sums, government funds, inheritance, oil contracts. The money is real but frozen. It needs your help to move. All you need to do is advance a small fee to cover the processing, the legal cost, the bribes, and the fees grow. The story gets more elaborate and the money never arrives. In its structure, 419 is not a Nigerian invention. Advance fee fraud is documented in Europe as far back as the 16th century. The Spanish prisoner, in which letters that circulated among wealthy merchants promised access to hidden treasure in exchange for front money. What Nigeria did was to scale it, systemize it, and eventually export it globally through the democratization of emails. By 2006, the FBI estimated Americans alone were losing over $200 million a year to advance fee fraud. By 2020, that number across all romance scams and advanced fee variants had crossed $1 billion annually in the United States alone. $1 billion per year in one country? That is big. And yet, in the popular imagination, 419 remains a joke, a spam filter problem, a thing that only happens to foolish people. That framing that the victims are fools is doing a lot of work, but we need to examine it. Who actually falls for 419 scams? The research, and there is a serious academic research on this, consistently challenges the foolish victim narrative. Studies from the University of Exeter and the AARP find that victims of advanced fee fraud skew the educated person, the financially stable person, and the professionally experienced person. They are not the naive or the desperate people. They are people who receive a believable story at the vulnerable moment. A recent bereavement, a financial setback, a period of loneliness, and who engage because the proposition in its early stages is constructed to be entirely plausible. Psychologists call it commitment escalation. Once a person has taken the first step, replied to an email, made a first more transfer, accepted that the story might be real, every subsequent step becomes easier, because to stop is to admit you were wrong from the beginning, and humans are wired to avoid that admission. The school teacher in Houston, he sent a second wire after the first one, and a third. He lost $61,000 in total before his daughter discovered what was happening. He never reported it, not because he was foolish, because he was ashamed. That shame is a design feature, not a side effect. The perpetrators count on it. The silence of victims is the single biggest reasons 419 fraud has operated in near total impunity for 30 years. Now, here is why I need you to hold two things in your mind at once. Because the story of who runs these operations is more complicated than you have ever been told. Section 419 of the Nigerian Criminal Code carries a maximum sentence of 3 years imprisonment. 3 years for stealing someone's life savings. Compare that to the United States, where wire fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1343 carries a maximum number of 20 years federal imprisonment per count. The disparity matters, but the disparity is not the main reason prosecutions are so rare. The main reason is jurisdiction. International fraud creates what lawyers call jurisdiction gap. The crime happens across borders. I told you about the story of Hush Puppy. He was living in Dubai, but he committed fraud on a US law firm, which is on the US soil. So here, a victim in Texas, a bank account in Lagos, money routed through Dubai, and eventually landing in London. For any single country to prosecute, they need to prove the crime occurred within their territory. In the United States, federal prosecutors can establish jurisdiction if any part of the wire transaction touched American soil, which it usually does, just as Hush Puppy's case. But extraditing a Nigerian national from Nigeria to face American charges requires cooperation between two governments, and that cooperation has historically been slow, selective, and politically fraught. Nigeria established the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, in 2003 under significant international pressure. And to be fair, the EFCC made high-profile arrests, it has recovered assets, and it has prosecuted cases. But critics, including senior Nigerian lawyers and international anti-corruption bodies, argue that EFCC enforcement is inconsistent, politically selective, and heavily focused on low-level operatives rather than the networks that run them. Here is a legal structure that actually allows 419 to continue functioning. 1. The wire fraud statutes exist, but cross-border prosecution requires bilateral legal cooperation that is rarely forthcoming. 2. Money laundering prosecutions, which should catch the financial infrastructure, require tracing assets through multiple jurisdictions, each with its own legal threshold and disclosure requirements. 3. Mutual legal assistance treaties between Nigeria and Western countries exist on paper, but in practice operate slowly, incompletely, and with significant gaps for digital assets and cryptocurrency, which, of course, are the modern medium of 419 fraud. The result is a legal architecture that criminalizes 419 on every side: Nigeria, the US, the UK, Canada, and yet produces very few meaningful convictions of major operators. And here is the question that never gets asked in mainstream coverage of this topic: who benefits from that architecture? Let's talk about money laundering infrastructure. The money generated by 419 fraud, billions of dollars over 3 decades, does not disappear into Nigerian mattresses. It moves. And to move at scale, it requires what financial investigators call gatekeepers: lawyers, accountants, real estate brokers, private bankers. A 2020 report by Global Financial Integrity, a Washington DC based research organization, estimated that corrupt proceeds from West African countries flow predominantly into Western financial systems through the willing or negligent participation of professional gatekeepers in the United States, the United Kingdom, and European Union. Banks in the UK were found holding hundreds of millions of dollars in suspicion funds from West Africa. Funds that should have triggered anti-money laundering protocols that either did not function or were not applied. The United States Treasury has pursued some of these cases. In 2021, the Justice Department Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Initiative recovered funds linked to Nigerian fraud operators, but the prosecution overwhelmingly targeted Nigerian nationals, not the Western financial professionals who facilitated the movement of that money. I'm not making the argument that Nigeria has no culpability here. It does. The EFCC's enforcement record is uneven. Corruption within Nigerian financial institutions is real and documented. What I am saying is this: 419 fraud at industrial scale is not possible without Western financial infrastructure. It is not possible without banks that process suspicious wires, without adequate scrutiny, without lawyers who incorporate shell companies, without asking where the money comes from, without real estate markets, London, New York, Dubai, that accept cash from opaque sources because the margins are excellent. The Nigerian prince did not build this system, he just learned how to use it. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, the IC3, recorded 21,832 complaints related to advance fee fraud in the US in 2022 alone, with losses exceeding $107 million. That is reported losses. Most researchers estimate that fewer than 15% of fraud victims report to authorities, which means that the real 2022 number is likely north of $700 million in 1 year in one country called the US. The EFCC reported 1,498 convictions in 2022. Impressive on paper, but the vast majority of those convictions were for low-level offenders, individuals, and not networks. The United States Department of Justice, in its most significant 419-related prosecution, Operation YY in 2018, arrested 74 people across multiple countries and seized $2.4 million, a meaningful operation against a multi-billion-dollar annual industry. When the enforcement numbers are this small relative to the scale of the crime, it is not incompetence, it is a policy choice. So, what does this law actually do with 419? On one level, the legal frameworks are adequate: wire fraud statutes, anti-money laundering regulations, mutual legal assistance treaties, the EFCC, Interpol corporations. We have the tools and they exist. On another level, the tools are applied selectively. Enforcement concentrates on the visible, the low level, the easily extradited, The financial architecture that makes industrial-scale fraud possible remains largely undisturbed. What would serious legal response look like? It will mean prosecuting gatekeepers, not just the fraudsters. It will mean applying anti-money laundering penalties to the banks and law firms that move these funds, not just the Nigerians who generate them. It will mean reforming mutual legal assistance frameworks so that digital asset recovery is faster than the criminal's ability to move funds. It will mean treating 419 as a transnational organized crime that it is, rather than as a punchline. The retired school teacher in Houston never got his $61,000 back. He never reported the crime. His daughter found out when he asked to borrow money against his house. He died in 2018 and was still ashamed. Nobody went to prison for what happened to him. Nobody usually does. The popular narrative says 419 is a Nigerian scam. The evidence suggests something more uncomfortable. The fraud may begin with an email from Lagos, but it rarely ends there. The money moves through international banks, it enters Western property markets, it is protected by corporate structures created in some of the world's most sophisticated financial centers. Without the scammers, there will be no fraud. But without the global financial system that absorbs and launders the proceeds, there will be no billion-dollar industry. The question is not whether Nigeria bears responsibility. The question is why so much attention is focused on the fraudsters and so little on the institutions that turn stolen money into legitimate wealth. RationalX examines the intersection of law, power, and justice. This content is for educational and analytical purpose only and does not constitute legal advice. If this episode raises questions about fraud, financial crimes, or your legal rights, the description below has resources. Subscribe and come back next week.